Hi, welcome back. If you're new to my channel, welcome to my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. Today I am doing a video you guys requested a lot and I'm finally getting around to doing it. And it's about how I edit my photos for Instagram. Recently I made two changes. First, I was editing mostly on my phone and now I'm using Lightroom. It's much easier than you think. And second of all, I am now going for a bit more of a moodier vibe on Instagram. And I would love your opinion on, if you like it more before or what I'm doing now. By the end of this video, you will know how I edit my photos and the basics on Lightroom, on how to navigate it and how to get your own or find your own vibe. I'm also gonna give you 3 main tips on how to keep a very clean, crisp, professional looking grid on Instagram. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. First of all, I want to say that I actually shoot everything on my Pixel 2. Google sent this phone to me as a regular phone about, 6 months ago. And I absolutely fell in love with the camera. I actually stopped carrying my DSLR, the big heavy camera. I don't shoot anything on camera. And it also allows me to do more spontaneous pictures and just carry it around with me and do anything. It's a great camera because it makes the foreground sharp, like the person sharp, and the background is still very, very sharp, just like a professional camera, but without the weight. So, let me get started. We're gonna go here onto my screen. First of all, I wanna show you guys my grid, the way it looks currently. So for the last few months, I have been doing this black and white, quite edgy, very sharp sort of editing. It mostly has white backgrounds, very deep shades. My closet has been mostly black and white with little pops of color depending on my mood and the weather and where I am. But mostly that has been the main theme almost. But now I feel like I'm going through all these changes. The weather's changing. Well, today we have snow, but the sun's starting to come out and pastel colors are really in, and I want to spice up my wardrobe a little bit more. So I'm going for more of a moody vibe. It's still very contrasty. It has still a lot of edge, a lot of deep tones. It's still very sharp, but it has a little bit more of an emotional feeling to it. So let me know what you think, see if you like it. So here I've loaded a photo of me that I shot over the weekend. And I go to develop mode. And the first thing I do is set it on the before and after view, which is this little button down here, and it lets me see how I'm editing the photo. Then if you're not a professional photographer and you're doing your grid more on the go sort of thing as I am, it's very hard to have 2 photos with identical light. Sometimes the sun is behind you or in front of you, and you can totally plan this and make your grid look even more cohesive. I personally prefer more spontaneous photos and then editing them to make sure they sort of look alike. So here the first thing I do is brighten it up. I always pull 2 photos for reference, as you can see here. This is one that I absolutely love the edits for. It's moodier, it's one of the most recent ones, and it has a bit more of a deeper, moodier vibe to it. And this is one of the photos before, which is a bit cleaner and very sharper, maybe a bit more flat. So I keep them both as reference. I still make sure that they sort of go with each other because it's still all part of my feed and it's all a progression. So I've made the whites look very similar and the color of my skin also look quite similar. So the first thing I do is try to make sure the skin color, or that I am as bright in one photo as the other. And I do that by going into shadows, which manipulates how dark your shadows are in the photo. And that's a really nice way to bring a photo to brightness without overexposing. So instead of using exposure, you can just bring your shadows up a little bit, and that immediately makes a massive change. I also like then to deepen my blacks because that gives it a bit more contrast without being so drastic by using contrast. So I deepen my blacks quite a fair bit. And then I try to even the color of my skin, which is usually a constant in my feed. So here I'm looking very pink because of the way we shot that day, and here I'm a little bit more orange. So one of the easiest ways to do this is to go to temperature and raise it a little bit. That's gonna give you more of an orangey tone. A lot of the bloggers right now are going for an orange vibe, which is really nice. I don't like keeping it all orange because I think too many people are doing it, but it looks fantastic and it makes your photo look vibrant, almost a bit vintagey, and it does provoke that like happy, easygoing vibe. So it's really nice, and I want some of that, so I'm keeping it. But I also then go into teeth whitening, which is a little tool up here, and take the orange or the excess orange off the background and just leave it, you know, on me, basically. Make myself look a little bit like an Oompa Loompa and make everything else look whiter. Make sure you don't miss all the nooks and crannies, like all the bits here, because that makes a huge difference and it makes your photos look more professional, just with tiny little details like that. And it's not that time consuming. You don't have to be precise. Instagram does lose a lot of quality on the photos anyway. So, and that already looks much sharper, and like it really brings up the image. Then I compare it again to my previous image, and I still see that the new one is very red. So I go into colors over here and maybe make my reds a little bit more orange and bring the saturation a touch down. Not much. And maybe add some luminance, some brightness to the yellows, and make my oranges a little bit more yellow. And it's starting to sort of bring that out. Those highlights that you get here, of course, is the light from that day when we shot. It was like reflecting, and I love using highlighter when I shoot, so I love highlighter every day, but when I shoot, I love it on my cheekbones and on my nose, and it really brings out those like glows. So if I have that here, it comes out a lot with the luminance, and you can also bring it up with highlights, but sometimes it's too much, so I actually prefer to bring my highlights down a little bit and the whites make them a little whiter. So there, I like the color of that. Still a bit more yellow. So you play around until you actually get a color that you like. Good, that's more or less it. It's never gonna be precise because you're not doing studio photography. You just need it to be like in the same range, and that's it. Here, I'm actually very comfortable with the way the image looks. I like to bring up clarity just a touch to make everything sharper, but not too much. And since I'm going for a bit of a moodier vibe, I then go into vignette, which is that little like aura that goes around the frame of the photo. And you can make it super dark or super white. And I just like to add a little bit of shade around the corners. Depending on the photo, you can always tweak it a little bit more, and you know, play it by ear, play around with those things. Basically all you need to think about is the shades, the blacks, the whites, and play a little bit with maybe the contrast or exposure depending on how you shot and on what you shot your photo, and then play with the colors. Here are my 3 tips to have a very nice cohesive grid, and they will actually help you edit your photos more mindfully. Number 1 is choose your vibe. What I mean by that is you need to choose if you're going for a nice bright orange sort of vintagey or happy vibe, or if you're going for maybe more of a moody, edgy photo, or somewhere in between, like what I'm doing. I'm adding some really warm colors and some really cool colors to make that contrast and make the images a little bit more interesting and with a bit more depth. And let's see if you guys like it after a few weeks of doing that. And yeah, so pick your vibe. Number 2 is pick 1 or 2 constant colors. So you will see that a lot of the bloggers right now pick like either red, and there's always like one little detail, either if it's a shoe or a handbag or a little sign in the background, and they always have like a red somewhere. What some of the easiest ones are white, because you can always whiten the sky or whatever, and of course orange, which is why all the girls are picking orange, because it's so easy to make yourself a little bit more orange depending on the color of your skin, but you can always tweak that. So pick a color and stick to it. Make sure it's constant. If you can't get into every single picture, get it every other picture, and that still makes your feed look very, very cohesive. And number 3 is stay original. Try to find your own thing. Spend some time on Lightroom, maybe a couple of afternoons playing around to feel more comfortable both with the software and knowing what you're doing. And eventually you'll find something. And don't be afraid to experiment with your grid, especially if you're just starting. I feel that your audience will really let you know what works by reactions. And it's also very important to do what you like, because at the end of the day, that's your image, that's what you're doing with your grid, what you're trying to convey to your public, to your audience. And yeah, just, you know, have fun with it. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I am super, super interested to hear if you like my edits before, the black and white sort of sharpness, or now the more moody ones. Leave a comment below, visit my Instagram, let me know what you think about the edits. Ask anything you want, either in comments or Insta stories, and I will catch you next time.